There's a specific thing that happens in the body, not the mind, the body. After a message goes out and doesn't come back, it starts almost immediately, a kind of low-grade alertness that hasn't decided yet whether it's concern or something heavier. You're still doing whatever you were doing, but you're not fully there. Some part of your attention that you didn't choose to give has already migrated toward the phone, not in a dramatic way, not in a way anyone watching you would notice. Just a portion of your processing has been quietly reassigned. And the silence, which is just an absence, just a thing that hasn't happened yet, has started to have a texture. This video is about what is actually happening in your brain in that moment. Not your character. Not your neediness. Not some failure of emotional regulation. Your brain. The specific structures, the exact sequence, the reason this feels the way it feels. And why? Once you understand the mechanism, the place where change actually lives becomes visible for the first time. Let's stay in the moment for a minute. Because the details matter. You sent a message to someone who matters to you, not a logistical message. Not, "What time are you coming?" Something that carried a little weight, even if only you knew it did. And they haven't responded. You don't pick up the phone immediately. You know that would feel obvious, even alone. But 30 seconds later, you know whether the message was read. You tell yourself you just happened to glance. Then the calculations begin. And this is the part worth paying close attention to because it happens so fast that most people don't catch it as a process. Your brain starts running interpretations of the silence. Maybe they're busy. That's the first one, the generous one, the one you try to hold on to. Maybe they didn't see it yet. Maybe they're in a meeting or driving or talking to someone, or any one of the 30 reasonable explanations available. And then, below those explanations, quieter, faster, not fully formed into language, something else. What if it's not that? You don't think that sentence consciously. It arrives more like a shift in atmospheric pressure. The chest tightens slightly, maybe at the sternum, maybe higher, somewhere near the base of the throat. Your breathing hasn't changed. You haven't moved. Nothing external has happened. And your body is already running a response to a threat that may not exist. If you know this feeling, specifically the way it has a physical address, this is not anxiety. This is not oversensitivity. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is what it was built to do. Here's what is actually happening. Your brain has a structure, the amygdala, whose entire job is threat detection. It does not deliberate. It does not weigh evidence. It does not wait for context. It scans the environment continuously for anything that pattern matches to danger. And when it finds a match, it fires in milliseconds. Before your prefrontal cortex, the part that reads books and understands attachment theory, has had a single thought. And here is where it gets specific to you. For people whose early attachment environment was unpredictable, where love was available sometimes and withdrawn or absent or inconsistent at other times, the amygdala learned something. It learned that the silence of someone who matters has a particular meaning. Not always danger, but potentially danger. And the cost of being wrong, the cost of assuming safety when the relationship is actually at risk, was historically too high. So the brain made a reasonable choice, a survival-level choice. It started treating relational silence as an ambiguous signal that required immediate monitoring. That learning happened early. It happened before language, before the part of you that can understand what we're talking about right now had the vocabulary for any of it. And it was encoded not in your thoughts, but in the firing sequence of your nervous system. This is why you can know, completely and genuinely, that the silence probably means nothing and still feel it as something. Not because you're irrational, not because you haven't done enough work, but because the knowledge and the activation are running on entirely different hardware. Research on social pain consistently shows that the experience of relational uncertainty activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The brain does not distinguish cleanly between the threat of losing connection and the threat of bodily harm. The waiting, the silence, the unread message. Your nervous system is not overreacting to nothing. It is responding, precisely and efficiently, to something it has been trained to treat as dangerous. That's not crazy. That's your wiring doing exactly what it was trained to do. And this is why just relax has never worked. Not because you lack discipline. Not because you're too far gone. Because telling the prefrontal cortex to override a subcortical alarm system is like telling someone to think their way out of a smoke detector. The detector doesn't respond to arguments, it responds to the absence of smoke. And your nervous system doesn't respond to understanding, It responds to experience. So here's the question worth sitting with. Not, how do I stop feeling this? Because now you know why that question misses the level where this actually lives. The real question is, what was this response calibrated to? Your nervous system built this pattern in a specific environment, an environment where monitoring was necessary, where the gap between a request and a response carried real information about how safe you were. Maybe that was a parent whose attention was conditional, available on some days, withdrawn on others, and you learned to track the difference because the difference mattered. Maybe it was an early relationship where the silence genuinely did mean something, where your reading of the signs turned out to be accurate. The pattern was intelligent once. It was built by a nervous system doing exactly what a nervous system is supposed to do: learn the rules of the environment it's living in and optimize for survival inside those rules. The problem is not that the pattern exists. The problem is that it survived the environment that created it. And your body, right now, tonight, in the silence after that message, is still running a program written for a world that no longer exists. The smoke detector is firing in a kitchen that isn't on fire. And the detector doesn't know that. It only knows what it was built to know. This is the thing that changes everything. Not as information, but as the frame through which you start to see your own responses differently. The intensity of what you feel in the silence is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence of how seriously your nervous system took the job of keeping you connected to the people you needed. It learned the wrong update. It stored the wrong rule. But the learning itself, the vigilance itself, that was love, in the only language your nervous system had. The silence feels like danger because your nervous system was once right about that. And it has not yet been given enough evidence, repeated, embodied, consistent evidence, to learn that it doesn't have to be right about it anymore. That's the whole thing. That's the level where this actually changes. For anyone who wants to work with this directly, not just understand it, but have something to reach for the next time the silence starts to have weight, there's a resource in the description built specifically for this. 7 somatic exercises calibrated to attachment anxiety specifically, not generic stress relief, but tools designed for the exact moment the nervous system fires in a relational context. The video named the mechanism. The kit in the description is what to use when the mechanism is running. It's there when you need it. Here's what nervous system calibration actually looks like. Because this is where the work lives, and it's different from what most people expect. It doesn't happen through insight. You already know that, because you've had the insight. It doesn't happen through willpower. You already know that too. It happens through repeated experience of a specific kind. The nervous system updates its threat assessment the same way it built it in the first place, through pattern. Not one experience. Not one relationship. Not one good conversation. Pattern. Accumulated. Embodied. Experienced at a level below language. What that looks like in practice. The silence comes, the activation fires, and then something different happens. Not suppression. Not argument. Not I shouldn't feel this. A moment of witnessing it. My nervous system is running a pattern that made sense once. I'm watching it run. That's not a cure. It's a unit of recalibration. One moment of watching the spiral instead of being it. That gap between being the activation and watching it is where the nervous system begins to receive new information. Not information in the cognitive sense. Information in the sense of, this moment is survivable. The silence is tolerable. The end of the world has not yet arrived. Over time, and it is over time, not over a weekend, the nervous system begins to update. Not because you convinced it, because you gave it enough repeated experience of being in the discomfort and staying, and the catastrophe not arriving, that the old calibration starts to loosen. This is what earned security actually is. Not the absence of activation. Not a personality that was never wired this way. A nervous system that has slowly, through accumulation of real experience, learned to distinguish between a silence that meant danger once and a silence that is just a silence now. The viewer who once watched a phone for 40 minutes after a routine message and couldn't stop and hated themselves for it. Becoming someone who notices the pull, names it, and is not consumed by it. That is not a fantasy. It is what the research on earned secure attachment documents, consistently, across people who were convinced they would never get there. You are not too far gone for this. The intensity of the response you've been living with is not evidence of permanent damage. It is evidence of how deeply the original learning took hold. And learning that deep can be updated, not undone, updated. The nervous system that learned fear can learn, with enough evidence, that the world it's living in now is a different world. If this opens something and you want a real tool for the next time the silence arrives, not more information, but something to actually do in the moment. The Nervous System First Aid Kit is in the description and the pinned comment. It's built for exactly this. Where does the feeling live in your body when the silence starts? And how long before you notice it's already there? Here's what to hold from this. Not as a goal. Not as something to feel differently about by tomorrow. As a fact about what was just named, the response you've been carrying, the checking, the calculations, the way the body fires before the thought arrives, was not a character flaw that showed up out of nowhere. It was a solution, built by a younger version of you in an environment where that solution was necessary, using the only tools available at the time. The nervous system that built it was doing its job. The problem was never that you were broken. The problem was that the solution outlasted the environment. And here's the thing about solutions that outlast their environment. They can be updated, not through understanding, you already have that, through experience. Through the accumulation of moments where the silence comes, and the worst doesn't happen, and the body slowly receives a different lesson. The next time it happens, and it will happen, because the nervous system doesn't recalibrate in a single sitting, have one sentence ready. Not to stop it, not to fix it, just to name it. My nervous system is running a pattern that made sense once. I'm watching it run. That distance between being the spiral and watching it, even for 2 seconds, is where the update begins. You don't have to be healed to find that distance. You don't have to have done everything right. You just have to find it once, and then find it again, and again. That's the whole thing. That is, quietly and without announcement, how a nervous system learns that it is safe to stay.